Hi, my name is Tyler Cleveland, and I'll be presenting over Rango. In Rango, there's a character named Rango who is a chameleon that starts as a pet, but after his cage is broken, becomes the sheriff of a town. And the town is called Dirt. That's where the movie takes place. And Dirt is very Wild West, and it's a very every man for themselves theme to the town, which is important for the clinical diagnosis. I believe that Rango has major depressive disorder, which is characterized by loss of interest and sadness over 2 week span or more. And in Rango's cultural context, as I said, it's the Wild West, so there's little access to mental health resources. So Rango has to go through self discovery rather than treatment options in order to alleviate himself from major depressive disorder. And at the time, the diagnosis then would have probably been more like physical exhaustion rather than depression, which was called neurasthenia in the 19th century in America. In a broader cultural context, major depressive disorder is expressed differently across different cultures because of cultural semantics, where one culture may have a word for major depressive disorder, another might not. And it's also less likely to be reported in East Asia due to the cultural conditions there. In a more local cultural context in America, there are stigmas surrounding it that major depressive disorders should be obvious and that people can just try to make themselves feel better. But this is actually wrong, that major depressive disorder isn't always obvious and that you can't just magically make yourself feel better. For the diagnosis of Rango, you have to have 5 or more of the given diagnostic criteria from the DSM-5 present for at least 2 weeks. The ones that I noted were depressed mood most of the day, which is shown throughout the movie for Rango. Markedly diminished interest or pleasure in activities, which is shown in the beginning of the film when Rango physically draws a box around himself when confronted with the isolation of his life. Psychomotor agitation. Rango is constantly kind of fidgeting with his hands and walking around and isn't always focused on what's going on. Feelings of worthlessness or excessive guilt throughout the film. Rango is contending with his self-identity, which brings on a lot of guilt that he feels. And then recurrent thoughts of death or suicidal ideation. Rango walks in the middle of a road during the movie waiting to be hit by a car. However, another diagnostic criteria for major depressive disorder is significant weight loss. Rango does not display this. According to Zimmerman in 2015, 9 combinations of the DSM-5 diagnostic criteria actually account for 40% of all major depressive disorder cases. Regarding treatment, I would prescribe Rango with psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, which would be changing his thought patterns so that he doesn't have more depressive thoughts, and then interpersonal therapy, which is improving interpersonal relationships and communication because he struggles with that throughout the film. And then I might also prescribe him antidepressants, starting with SSRIs because they're a starting prescription for most doctors and are generally safer. Regarding ethical concerns for the treatment, that people can have physical dependence on antidepressants and also can, if they stop abruptly taking antidepressants, that can cause withdrawal-like symptoms. And then also, mass marketing of SSRIs by the pharmaceutical industry cause it to be more sought after than necessary. And then regarding barriers to treatment, again, as I stated, the Wild West culture, every man for themselves, kind of limits the ability for therapy and other services for Rango. And then there's also a lack of access to treatment because it is kind of a 19th century setting and it is this Wild West culture. I believe that the portrayal of major depressive disorder for Rango is accurate. It's not always externally noticeable, and it fits the diagnostic criteria of the DSM-5. Regarding broader portrayal in film, mental disorders, including major depressive disorder, are often inaccurately portrayed, which influences how we as viewers think about and interact with mental disorders, which can further increase the marginalization of people with mental disorders. These are my references. Thank you.